Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you. So I wanted to show you all something that I kind of cooked up here for the Theme Chronicle event. I definitely don't think that I'm alone in, rather than, going with one of the solo mode decks, just kind of looking for like what exactly can I get away with under these, under this ban list, under the event ban list, with all the cards banned. So before, when the event ban list came out, I started going through all my different decks and seeing, okay, what all got hit the hardest? What all is actually still possible to play with the support that Konami has left? And one of the archetypes that I haven't seen a whole lot of people talk about, and I don't know, maybe it's actually reasonable because this deck does feel very on the fence for like how good it actually is. But I noticed that Sky Striker, there were 3 cards that were banned: Rei, Kagari, and Shizuku. Now, obviously, those are arguably three of the best cards in the deck, but Engage, I noticed notably, did not get hit, and this card I definitely expected to get hit. If Konami's going after like the ultra rares of an archetype or the known good cards of an archetype, you'd think they would hit Engage, but they actually didn't. So with only Rei and the 2 of the Link monsters banned, I thought, if all the Sky Striker spells are here, that means the deck is probably playable. I don't know if it's good, but it's definitely playable. So I just decided to start like cooking and brainstorming, just trying to figure out how I was going to make the deck work. And I think this is just about the list that I've landed on. But this is one of those cases where I definitely like some input from you all in the comments, just to see how you feel about this deck in the event, what you would change, so on and so forth. So this is Spellbook Sky Striker. It's a bit of a brew, but basically the idea behind this deck is that we're playing a very control-oriented game here, and we're going to lean really heavily, particularly into Mecha modules and Multirole. Without Kagiri or Shizuku or Rei, Multirole actually becomes like the key, I think, in my opinion, one of the key components to making this engine, the Sky Striker engine, work under this ban list. So the idea is that Widow Anchor is a really good card. It's honestly, it's not just Multirole, but it's also Widow Anchor. Like, these 2 cards are what made me think, if these are both still at 3 along with Engage for this event, then I think Sky Strikers might be at least somewhat playable. So obviously the idea is that, we want to not only be negating stuff with Widow Anchor, but also potentially stealing things. I think in this particular iteration of the deck, it does become much more important to actually steal things with Widow Anchor, because that's really just about the only way we're able to go into our higher Link monsters, like notably Avramax and like Appaloosa. I actually haven't really gone for these yet. There's been one instance where I could have gone for Ningirisu that we'll actually see in one of the games we're going to watch, but the idea is that after we steal stuff with Widow Anchor, we can potentially go into one of these. Really, the main issue with that is that Linkage often gets in the way. Being able to only special summon Sky Striker aces and then without Rei, there's a lot of the time where you need Linkage to get play set up. But even, in that case, we can just go into Zeke. That's fine. Zeke, you want to save for, stealing something after you've linkaged. So. As far as the Spellbook engine, it's pretty minimal. It's 3 Blue Boy, 3 Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, 3 Spellbook of Secrets, and 3 Spellbook of Knowledge, and that's it. That's the only Spellbooks stuff we're playing. Really, the idea is just that we want to normal summon Magician of Prophecy, use that to add Secrets, and then use Secrets to add Knowledge, and then Knowledge can sack the Spellbook Magician, get it off the field so we can use our Sky Striker spells. That'll draw us 2 cards, so that's a +1 because the Prophecy by itself generates a draw 2, so you get to +1, and on top of that, that also puts 2 spell cards in the graveyard. Initially, I was playing just like 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods and 1 copy of Metal Foes Fusion to potentially add more spells. You could do that, but I really wasn't a huge fan of it. I actually like the Spellbook engine a lot, though, because, again, you get the +1. Now, it does use your normal summon, but to be fair, literally the only other thing you normal summon this deck is Roze if you happen to draw her, and most of the time you're summoning Roze, it's actually going to be off of the Airspace Area 0. I've gone back and forth kind of whether I want 2 or 3 copies of this card in the deck, but you definitely want to avoid too many, and I think I like having 2 and a Terraforming more because the Terraforming can add an additional spell in the graveyard. And again, Widow Anchor is much more a key focus of the deck, and it's more important to have 3 spells in grave so that we can actually be taking control of our opponent's monsters. So There's multiple things obviously we can do with the Widow Anchor aside from just linking our opponent's monsters away. We can, of course, just beat them down with their monsters as well. Although this deck, I've noticed, tends to be kind of more just control-oriented. We're definitely not able to one-turn kill our opponent with this deck, even with 3 linkage, because, again, we don't have Ray. But all the same, you can usually win over, like, 2 or 3 turns of just attacking in with your monsters. Hayate is pretty good in this variant because not only can you punch through boards that your opponent, like when you're controlling your opponent down, they're just going to start setting monsters, and Hayate allows you to punch in for damage beyond anything your opponent sets up. And then beyond that, you can also like Hayate to send the Widow Anchor to the graveyard, and then main phase 2 activate Mecha modules, and then like any other Sky Striker spell, and then you could set the Widow Anchor you just sent. You can also potentially do it with Engage as well. So, even though that we don't have the Kagari to immediately bring the spell back, we can still send stuff with Hayate to eventually get back with the Mecha modules. So, as far as like how good the deck actually is, I wouldn't call it. It's definitely not like a top tier deck within this format, but it's fun and it's playable. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit different, I hadn't really seen anybody talk about Sky Strikers in this format, and I definitely think they're an archetype worth exploring. So that's why I decided to. Anyway, I've got a few games to show off what this deck is capable of doing, so we'll go ahead and take a look at those. But first, as always as ever, I'm going to go ahead and break down the list card by card, and then we'll take a look at those games. So for this deck, we're playing 3 Maxx, 3 Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Sky Striker Ace Roze, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Terraforming, 3 Spellbook of Secrets, 3 Spellbook of Knowledge, 2 Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, 1 Sky Striker Maneuver Afterburners, 2 Sky Striker Airspace Area 0, 3 Sky Striker Mecha Modules Multirole, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones, 3 Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor, 1 Sky Striker Mecha Shark Cannon, and then finally 3 Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. For the extra deck, we're playing 3 Sky Striker Ace Hayate, 2 Sky Striker Ace Kaina, 1 Knightmare Cerberus, 1 Knightmare Phoenix, 1 IP Masquerena, 2 Sky Striker Ace Zeke, 1 Lynne the Light Charmer Lustrous, 1 Ningirisu the World Chalice Warrior, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax, and then finally 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess. One thing I will say, I was thinking of maybe putting some more Charmers in the extra deck, particularly the Earth and Dark Charmers. Earth, we can get it to with Kaina. We could do Wind for Hayate, but there's not really too many Wind things to steal. And then Dark is like technically possible with like the token and maybe Zeke, but I'm a little more iffy on that. You can also do it with IP Masquerena, but I'm a little more iffy on the Dark Charmer. So again, this is very much a deck and very much a format that's highly experimental. So any suggestions for the build, I would definitely highly welcome those. But let's go and take a look at some games. Alright, so this first game is going to be against Crusadia, which of course we covered, and is, in my opinion, it's going to be the most played deck of this meta, and it alongside Orcus, I think, are the best decks this meta. I'm actually kind of thinking about, just doing, a little meta breakdown for this event, although that video might have already gone up, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, just of the timing I want these videos to come out. So, in any case, this deck is, like many in this format, one that actually wants to go second. Well, mainly like Crusadia, but there's also the blind 8-axis danger decks out there too. So this deck actually does want to go second, and being able to go second in this format is huge, because Crusadia obviously is very abundant and literally always wants to go second. To the point that if you actually make a Crusadia player go first, this is very often what they'll do. They'll just pass with no board. Now, this deck isn't one that can OTK or anything and take advantage of it in that regard, but it is, the opponent still giving us a free turn, which literally any deck can take advantage of. Also getting the extra draw going second is very nice. So this hand's looking really, really good. We've got the Magician of Prophecy to set up a couple of spells in grave. Can potentially get those online before we engage. It's going to depend on if our opponent has a response or not. And then, of course, also what we draw off of the Spellbook of Knowledge as well. Now, even though I have the Magician of Prophecy in hand, I, of course, still want to send the one on field to grave, so that way I can use my Sky Striker spells. End up drawing an extra Spellbook of Secrets there. We can only activate 1 per turn, so that alongside the multi-rolls was, in a way, kind of perfect. I can just set the Spellbook of Prophecy, send that, and then use that for a multi-rolls effect. Not that I'm actually concerned about my opponent responding to my spells, but more importantly, it gets a 3rd spell card in my graveyard. So now, all my Sky Striker spells get their bonus effects. I get to draw a card off of the Engage. Of course, I draw Area 0 and Terraforming, but it's fine. We'll just put Terraforming in the graveyard. It's actually pretty crucial, or can be anyway, to have particularly 3 non-Sky Striker spells in grave, because sometimes you end up setting stuff back with the Mecha modules, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, you don't have 3 spells in grave anymore. That can sometimes come up, but it's usually not too difficult to circumvent. So here we did the play where we, actually we sent the Linkage, right? We used Linkage to send the Area 0. That's a pretty common play for me in this deck. Lets you get 3,000 damage in, and then if you need your monster zones back, you just link away into Zeke. I actually should have banished Zeke here. Well, I don't know about should have, but it's definitely worth considering. Now Zeke, we'll come back to your main monster zone, so you will have to be mindful of that, but having guaranteed access to a link 2 on your follow-up turn definitely makes going into your higher link monsters like Appaloosa and Avramax a little bit more easy to do. So let's go start with a 4-mud skipper. I'm going to negate it, and I actually took control of it, and that was definitely a misplay, because I do have another Widow Anchor here that I would like to use, so I actually should not have taken control of this 4-mud skipper. It was, like I said, definitely a misplay on my part, because that's going to lock me being able to use this, lock me out of being able to use this Widow Anchor, if I can do my words correctly there. So, do my words, great. Anyway, yeah, I do still get to negate the Magius, because of how my opponent chain blocked, so there is that, but they're still going to get access to, I was going to say Joyous to Timeless, but it actually looks like they linked those away for an update jammer. Looks like they're attempting to go for an Equimax that can attack twice this turn. That's fine, because nothing's pointing to this Equimax, so, well, nothing on my board anyway, and, like, yeah, they can attack me for a decent bit of damage, but as long as it doesn't kill me, that's fine, I don't care. Crusadia, like, their win condition is always going to be one-shotting you, so it doesn't, if they do any amount of damage that's not lethal, it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about, like, trying to prevent it. It's totally fine, as long as it's not lethal, so. I get to start with an Engage here. I kind of figured my opponent was going to use the Equimax to negate it, so what I'm going to do actually is use Linkage to send the Engage away. Now the Engage is no longer in play, and the Equimax isn't negated, so I was going to use the Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage anyway, so it was nice to be able to get that in play. Of course, I still had access to multiple Widow Anchors to steal their Equimax, battle them with it, and then I would have had to link it to a Zeke because I did use the Linkage. I can only summon Sky Striker Aces for the rest of the turn, but that's still fine. So that's a pretty decent showcase of what this deck typically likes to do. Let's go and take a look at the next duel here. So for this duel, we were playing against the For Hire deck, which I've only played against a couple of times. I don't think it's a solo gate. No, it's not. Plunder Patrol is the one I was thinking of, so the other pirate deck. But I guess, hey, this deck just managed to fly under Konami's radar enough that they didn't get hit at all. So I'm going to give my opponent the first turn here. They're going to start off with the, what is this, Philo? But I'll just Maxx C in response. I think, yeah, they have a call by, so no extra draws for me, but my hand's pretty solid. I mean, it's got Engage and Blue Boy in it, so that's a pretty good opening there, these two. We even have the Spellbook of Knowledge, so like even if our Blue Boy gets like Veilard or Ashe or Imperm, that's totally fine. We can just send it to draw 2. We'll get one less spell in the grave. That's ultimately what we wanted to do anyway. The Magician of Prophecy is also really nice just for being able to bait like the negates in general, particularly the Ash Blossom, being able to negate, or not negate, but rather bait it out with your Spellbook stuff before you can actually, you know, before you go into your Sky Striker stuff is really nice. So they will have this, you know, this Sage that can negate my spell and trap cards, but that's fine. I'm not super concerned about it. Yeah, opponent's gonna start off with a Ghost Ogre on my Spellbook of Magician. That's totally fine. Because, well, I obviously have another one, but I also had the Spellbook of Knowledge anyway, so I could have just added the Secrets and then discarded Secrets with Knowledge, and then just drawn 2 that way. Knowledge can't discard another copy of itself, so do be mindful of that. I was actually thinking of playing, like, one other random Spellbook just to have something else to discard with Knowledge, because that's come up, like, once or twice, but I don't think it's come up enough for it to be worth it. Like, Spellbook of Fate, maybe, but, nah. I could lean more into a Spellbook package, but then at that point you could, to be fair, Spellbooks have a structure deck and like nothing in it is banned. Despite not having a solo gate, I don't think there's a single banned card within the Spellbook archetype. So, now, to be fair, Jowgen the Spiritualist is banned, which is why I'm not playing a Spellbook of Judgment. And also because, you know, the Magician of Prophecy doesn't, you know, it's only when it's normal summon or flip face up. If this added something when it got specialed, I'd maybe consider adding Spellbook of Judgment just to get a bunch of advantage, but... Well, actually I wouldn't though, because then I put something in my main monster zone, I couldn't use my Sky Striker spells, so... I think either way I don't want Spellbook of Judgment. Well, I think I'd probably still play it if Jowgen was legal, but Jowgen is banned for this event. Yeah, so I'll just use Zeke as removal here, getting rid of their full go. And they actually had a Nibiru as their last card, so... that seemed pretty annoying on the surface, but then I was like, wait, they don't have any other cards in hand. Like, how are they going to out the token? And this is a lesson I feel as old as, well, the card itself, but don't Nibiru your opponent if you don't have an out for the big-ass token. We just offered that advice there. So, I've got a Linkage. I can't use it, to be fair, but my opponent, yeah, is just going to concede anyway. I didn't think they really had an out to the 4600 Primal Being token, which, again, definitely going to have to make sure you have outs to that before you just slam the Nibiru down. I remember thinking that too mid-game. I had that sinking moment of like, ah, crap, the last card is Nibiru. And I was like, wait, their actual literal last card is Nibiru. And my token is definitely going to be bigger than that Nibiru. So, all right, there's that game. Let's go and take a look at the next one. All right, so this duel here is going to be against who else but Crusadia. So, I definitely expect to see, as I've said many times, a lot of this deck in this event. It's kind of interesting how Crusadia, being the best deck, has warped this. I don't know if warped is necessarily the right word, but it's definitely like this meta has a very interesting, like, kind of, particularly with going first or second, it's got a very interesting kind of decision making process as far as that goes. Not just in the actual game itself, but even in deck building. I think you can definitely deck build in a way that takes advantage of the fact that, again, the best deck wants to go second. If not best, at least the most used deck in this format wants to go second. There's a lot of ways you can take advantage of that. And I think one of them is by, and again, I think this is what makes Sky Striker, you know, at least somewhat playable in this format, is the fact that this deck likes to go second. And when you make Crusadia go second, as I pointed out earlier, and as my opponent did yet again here, they just have to pass without playing anything at all. And, like, giving your opponent the free turn there is so good. For the opponent, of course. Now, they do have a Harpie's Feather Duster for this Widow Anchor, which is annoying. And also the fact that Zeke points to one of their zones. This is fairly annoying. I could have maybe considered, like, banishing Zeke again here. But I ultimately just decided not to. There is actually a game, I think the last one we're going to see here, I do banish Zeke when I summon it and just kind of get it back next turn. But anyway, I do have the Ash Blossom, but they've actually got the Call by the Grave. So that's it. I'm out of responses. But another nice thing about Sky Strikers versus Crusadia is that this is one of those decks where you can have some board presence, but still make them have the Kaiju. Because, you know, we put our monsters, obviously, in our extra monster zone, and then we don't have anything in the main monster zone. But Crusadia is either extra deck monster to point to something. So we basically, now granted, a lot of the time they do have the Kaiju because they play a lot of Kaijus, but this is a situation where we force them to have the Kaiju, which means they can't always OTK us under every circumstance. And this is actually going to end up being one of those circumstances. So they do get to go for their Equimax, and they do get to go for their, you know, they get to add a decent amount of attack points to it, but I also figured when they activated the Monster Reborn and we were able to stop the... Well, we weren't able to stop the Search, that's right. Yeah, you know, I figured when they went for the Draco that, oh, they must not have the Maximus, so they're not going to deal that much damage. But as I said before, like, any amount of damage that's not lethal is fine when we're playing against Crusadia, so... Yeah, there's not really a whole lot else I can do here besides just summon Roze, go for Hayate. I'll send them the Multirole because it's not really useful at this point. Just kind of getting it out of my deck and getting another spell card in the graveyard. And then I can use Kaina to make sure this Equimax is an attack. Now, to be fair, that doesn't stop my opponent from going into Avramax, but it really stops the Equimax from getting out of control. Now, here they do actually have the Kaiju, but, you know, fortunately, their Equimax is actually, you know, not able to attack. Now, this hand looks really dead, but actually because we have Lustrous, the, or Lynne of the Light Charmer Lustrous, we actually have plays here. I decided to include this not just because of Roze, but also because light is actually a fairly common attribute in this meta. Not just with Crusadias, but there's actually a decent amount of decks playing some amount of light monsters here. So I get to go for a Knightmare Unicorn and put my opponent's Equimax back into the deck, which is nice. Then I can bring back my Roze, and that's actually not enough for lethal. That was 3,700. My opponent was at 39, but they just conceded anyway. So, I mean, we'll take it. You know, to be fair, I would have left them at 200 and then gone for an Avramax. And, hey, yeah, that actually was a game where I was about to go for Avramax, the one where I would have. But I don't know if my opponent missed lethal or miscounted that they thought that I had lethal when I didn't. But, either way, we'll definitely take the win. I mean, we also had the board state very much under control as well. So there is that, too. All right, we've got one more duel to watch. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it. And our final duel is, of course, it's going to be against Crusadia yet again. Yeah, that's obviously going to be the vast majority of everyone's games, I think. I don't know what else. What else have I really been seeing? Of course, there's Orcus as well. There's about as many Orcus as Crusadias. Actually, I've not seen as many, to be fair, but. Because Orcus is a little bit more involved. You only need a handful of Ultras for that deck, to be fair. So anyway, I'm going to start off with a multi-roll here, and my opponent activates Maxx, which is baffling to me. They really fired it off right away in the actual game, too. I don't know why. Why in response to multi-roll of all cards? I guess it really just is a case of people not reading what, the other person's cards do, but I mean, really now. At least to some degree. The word special summon is not on this card at all. I don't get it, but to be fair, I would have linkaged here normally, but I'm totally fine missing out on 1,500 or 3,000 damage to not give my opponent any more draws. That is totally fine with me. This again being a more control or a more slow type of control deck. So I'll hit the Arborea with the Called Bite here just to make it a little bit harder for my opponent to combo off. Basically, it just kind of forces them to have it forces them to search because normally if they'd been able to get back Arborea, they could have just searched Maximus here, right? And they can just special they can link for Regulus, special the Arborea, and then special the Maximus or the Equimax, and maybe they have a parallel Exceed, and maybe they can. Well, I guess to be fair, I don't have any monsters, so I always forget that. I always think Maximus doubles battle damage no matter what, but it does have to actually be battling with a monster in order for the double battle damage to go through. So, no, to be fair, Maximus wouldn't have made a difference anyway, so, okay, never mind. That was my whole point, I guess, but nah, the main point is that, hey, there's Maximus right there. Yeah, the main point is that because we don't have any monsters, they're not really able to OTK us. That's definitely the name of the game, I think, of this format. If you're not making a major player going for a game, just try not to put any monsters on board if possible. Well, we got a Spellbook of Secrets there, which is nice, because that means we can get the Knowledge, and that means with the Callblade that's already engraved, now we have 3 spells in our graveyard, which means we can not only be taking stuff with the Equimax, but, well, not really. Oh, but I knew there was another card. It was the Engage. Yeah, we get to draw another card off of Engage. I'm actually just going to search another Widow Anchor here, and then I'll just use the Widow Anchor I have in hand and keep the one I have face down, Hidden Knowledge. Oh, and also, you might have noticed that I threw out the multi-roll there, sacking the face down Spellbook of Secrets. Well, I noticed that my opponent was getting prompts to respond at pretty much everything I was doing, which to me kind of indicated they probably had Maxx. So I figured, okay, if I use the Mecha modules, then they're not going to be able to chain Maxx to my linkage, so that's going to severely limit how many draws they're actually able to get here. So that's pretty nice. Now I'll just go ahead and send the Widow Anchor that's still on the chain link. I'll battle with this Maximus, send a card with Hayate, do a little bit of damage with the Equimax, and then I can just link away these two into a Zeke. Just completely rob my opponent of any resource. And this time, like I said in the last game, I am actually going to use Zeke's effect to banish itself. Now, like I mentioned before, it is going to come back to my main monster zone, but the reason I was fine with doing it here is because I've got both the Airspace Area 0 and the Mecha modules, so I have multiple ways of getting monsters out of my main monster zone if I really need to, and then if I really, really have to, I can always just link it away for, one of the Link 1 Sky Striker monsters too. So I'm going to start off again with a Blue Boy for this turn, adding the secrets, and then I'm not even going to go for really any Sky Striker stuff this turn. I'm just going to use Zeke's effect, sending the area 0. That'll not only power up Zeke, but also allow me to special a Roze from deck. From there, I can summon a Sky Striker monster, special summon this last Roze in my hand, and then that's going to be exactly 6,000 damage. So, yeah, it's not terribly difficult with a decent hand to cobble together like a 2-turn kill like this. So, that's another reason why I think like maybe this deck might be decent in this format. Again, I'm not here to claim that I've invented the best deck of Theme Chronicle, but you know, it's playable, and even if it's not, in my opinion, quite as engaging as like the normal rare event, I do still think it's nice to kind of have these ban lists where you're forced to make decks work under varying circumstances. So yeah, definitely let me know what you all think of the deck, and if you have any suggestions for it, I would absolutely love to hear those. But that's all I've got for this one, so let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me, not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.